All right, hello art students. So we are going to be looking at how to make our 1-point perspective letters or linear perspective letters a little more interesting with pattern. So the type of pattern I'm going to be talking about, which you can see I've started my letters with an example, is called Zentangle drawing. All right. So Zentangle drawing is a type of pattern drawing. I think it probably came out about 5 or 10 years ago was the first time I really saw it, but someone kind of developed this as a relaxing way of doodling. And the way you do it is just by repeating lines, shapes, designs, patterns. When you recreate these things or repeat the lines and shapes, you get different patterns. So it's not meant to be something that is perfect. It's not meant to be something that is stressful. It's more meant for you to just kind of find different patterns that are relaxing and easy to make. Some of these look pretty complicated. Don't let them seem so difficult or complicated. All they are just repeating lines and shapes and designs. So I have a couple of these that I've already drawn. I'm going to go over with you how to add to these or complete some of these patterns. You can also come up with your own patterns. I'm going to attach a couple of different examples to the assignment for you to get some ideas. You can also just Google Zentangle patterns and find different patterns you might like. So some of the easier ones just involve making lines. So if you make a straight edge like this up here, you can just go ahead and start repeating some of the lines. So you're trying to keep things parallel for this one. Little parallel straight lines. If they're a little wiggly, it's fine. If they're different sizes or they're spaced out differently, that's okay too. This is about taking your time and just staying focused. And if it looks a little funky, like you can see some of my lines might not connect all the way. Some of them are a little bit darker. That's fine. It's more about kind of the rhythm of drawing and doing these repeated patterns over and over again. So geometric patterns, if you're worried about drawing straight lines, might be a little tricky for you. That's fine. But this one is a nice simple one with basic repeating lines. You can also do this, you can do this with pencil, or right now I'm using a Micron pen. You can use a regular ballpoint pen, whatever you have. You can use a Sharpie, you can use colored pencils, markers, doesn't matter, whatever you have is fine. A fine point pen like this might help you with a little bit more detail here with the shading. But these are some other examples of what to do. So if you want to do something a little more kind of relaxing or simple, you can just make some spirals that connect and kind of continue them through like they're overlapping. Bring them right up next to each other. You can see I'm taking my time, but I'm not stressing about making it look perfect. I'm just kind of going with the way my pen is moving, keeping it simple. Another one that's kind of fun to do is this one right here. You can just make little bumps that kind of connect. Almost look like fish scales or feathers or something. So I'm going to make just little bumped lines. And then I'm going to go back. I'll make a bump line at the bottom. And I can go back and fill in that first section if I want, or maybe I want to keep it plain. It doesn't really matter. And then I'll do a couple more repeating lines. Again, I'm just taking simple bumped lines and adding them one on top of the other. So it doesn't really have to be anything perfect. It's just more about finding something relaxing to add as a part of your pattern. Another example, this one right here is nice and easy. You just start by making some wiggly lines like this, crisscross wiggly lines, and then you kind of follow those wiggly lines to make little square-ish shapes on the inside. Zentangle is basically all about repeating patterns. So as long as you're kind of starting with something and repeating, it usually looks pretty interesting. It keeps it kind of busy and moving. If you don't like any of these patterns, come up with some of your own, do some Googling. This one's going to be pretty easy too. You can just go ahead and make 3 parallel lines that are horizontal. Next to that, 3 vertical lines, horizontal lines, vertical lines. This actually reminds me of maybe, I don't know, maybe you guys are too young for this, but we used to have these balls that we used in gym class. We used them for kickball, and they had this like same exact pattern on them. So I love this one because it feels like my elementary school days, which is kind of fun. This one might be an easy one too. All you gotta do is make a grid. So you can see I did kind of crisscross lines. Then you go back and make a zigzag on the inside. And then you look and you see, okay, I see some vertical lines in this section, horizontal lines here. So I'm going to do horizontal lines that are connected, vertical lines that are connected. The one below it, you kind of repeat whatever is touching in the next box, you do the opposite. So these were horizontal. I'll make these vertical. I'll make these horizontal. These were horizontal, so I'll make these vertical. These horizontal. These are going to be vertical and horizontal all the way down. So you can see, I'm going to switch over back to my drawing here, and I'm going to show you a couple of things to do. First thing I want you guys to do is use your marker, whatever you have, pen, doesn't matter, and you are going to be outlining your letters. So this kind of helps make things a little bit easier to see. So if you have a marker, you can outline it with the marker. If you have a pen, just outline it with the pen. If you're just sticking with pencil, just go over it and then actually draw a final outline to make it dark. You can go back over your perspective lines too. Use your straight edge to make sure it connects from the vanishing point to the corner of your letter. Also, I saw a lot of you guys already submitted a drawing. You don't have to submit it until Friday because I'm going to ask you to add these patterns. But from what I did see, I'm really impressed with what you've done so far. A lot of you are really showing me that you understand the concept of how these lines connect to the vanishing point. And that is what I'm looking to see. Even if your drawing's not super neat or if your block letters are a little wiggly, that's fine. But I'm very, very impressed with how you guys have been doing with the 1-point perspective process of connecting all these lines back to the vanishing point. Again, I've taught this to different grade levels, and you guys are right now doing the best out of any grade level I've taught. So good job. That's awesome. For these letters, you're going to go ahead and pick out different patterns that you want to do. Depends on what you want to do, but I'm going to show you kind of a quick way to get this done. This one's actually very easy. I want to show you this, and then I'm actually going to try to do a time-lapse video to make this faster. But if you want to do something like this, you're just going to fill it up with circles. Start with the biggest circles that you can. Fill up the spaces with bigger circles that are touching but not overlapping. You could do overlapping too if you wanted to. It's up to you. Then I'm going to go back and fill it up with smaller circles as I go. So you can kind of see just the repetition of shapes kind of makes it look interesting. So it's just circles. I'm not making it super tricky. But by filling in all the empty spaces with smaller and smaller circles and staying inside my letter, it just kind of looks neat. Okay? All right. So I'm going to attempt to make this a time-lapse video to redo the rest of these letters, and hopefully that will give you an example of what to do. The last thing I want to point out before I go into speedy mode here is the shading that I did along the back part of the letter. I used a pencil for this. 8th graders, you will know this. I actually used the marker here to do some hatching to make these parallel lines. It's closer to us, so we're going to make it darker down here and lighter as it goes back in space. Anywhere I thought if I put the light source up here, like the sun shines above the horizon, the top of the letters would be lighter. And any letter that's going towards the bottom, any part of the letter that's going towards the bottom, would be darker. So you could do some shading if you want, but you're not required to. All right, I'm going to show you how to fill in these letters, hopefully in time-lapse mode. But try your best. This is meant to be fun. Don't stress about it. You're just trying to have a good time trying to get this done. Okay, so that is my completed name. You can say I did some shading, I added some different patterns. You can feel free to experiment with patterns, like maybe you want to try something different. You can use this sheet for a reference if you want to. If you want to just make your own and be creative, that's fine too. Use lines, dots, whatever, any simple patterns. So, you know, you can do different things with different dots, with different lines. Whatever you feel like looks best for you, whatever you feel like is nice. Keep it simple though. I wouldn't change colors too much. You're welcome to if you want to. If you want to get crazy and use a lot of colors, you can. But it's more just focusing on trying to make some patterns and doing something unique and different without making it too complicated. What I don't want to see, however, is when you have your name, right? That's my other example from the other day. Do not just give me one of these, 5 polka dots, call it a day, or scribble, call it a day, or you don't want to just make it a mess. You want to actually think about what you're doing. So if you're taking your time, you're building up patterns, you're thinking about what might look interesting, and slowly going from there, that's going to be something that overall I think you'll be happy with the way it looks. I'm looking for effort here. I'm looking to see if you guys can be creative. So none of this. Take your time. It doesn't have to be anything fancy, even if you want to just keep it simple with like big and small dots. That's fine too. You can do, think about different things that you could add, right? Like even if you had big and small dots, you could go back and maybe add like different line patterns in between. Just experiment, see what you like. You can practice on a separate page, but this whole thing is just meant to be practice and kind of fun. So think about the different patterns you want to do. Remember, Zentangle is just the repetition of patterns, kind of calming doodling. So I hope you guys enjoy this one. Have fun with it. Just give me your best effort and let me know if you have questions.